I was once told by an old wise man that all the magic in the world is in New Orleans. It's the home of jazz, Cajun food, colonial architecture, and the famous Mardi Gras, which we'll talk more about later. And the Big Easy is another name for it. And guess why it's called that? The busy city is the middle of the South, where the Gulf of Mexico meets the Mississippi River and Louisiana. It's a place where French and African American cultures mix to make something new and interesting for people to see and do. And we'll show you why people come from all over the world to enjoy the city of celebration. The first place we'll go is the French Quarter, which is also called Vieux-Care. It's in the middle of New Orleans and has a lot of history. Jean-Baptiste Le Mignon de Bienville, a French-Canadian explorer, started the city in 1718. The French and the Spanish were the first people to live here. Today, it's a lively, colorful neighborhood with some of the city's most famous landmarks like Bourbon Street, Jackson Square, and the St. Louis Cathedral. Creole-style buildings in bright colors line the narrow, winding streets of the French Quarter. The architecture of the area is a mix of Spanish, French, and Creole styles. Many of the buildings have balconies and courtyards with intricate ironwork. The neighborhood is also known for its lively street life, with musicians and artists performing on street corners and vendors selling local crafts and foods. And Bourbon Street, which is known for its nightlife, is one of the most well-known places in the French Quarter. The street is full of bars and nightclubs, and both tourists and locals like to get there. Many of the bars have live music, and there are also a few well-known jazz clubs. A number of museums and culture centers are also in the French Quarter. These include the New Orleans Museum of Art, the Louisiana State Museum, and the New Orleans Historic Voodoo Museum. These places show some of New Orleans and the surrounding areas' rich history and culture. In general, the French Quarters are a lively, colorful, and culturally rich neighborhood. It's a must-see for anyone visiting New Orleans, and has something for everyone from live music and nightlife to historic landmarks and cultural institutions. The French Market is an old market that has been a center of business and culture for more than 300 years. It is one of the oldest public markets that has always been open in the United States, and visitors to the city should go there. It runs for 6 blocks along the Mississippi River, from the French Quarter to the Upper Quarter, and has a wide range of vendors selling everything from fresh produce and seafood to handmade crafts and souvenirs. It's open every day, and people can look around in dozens of shops, each of which has its own style and goods. It's a place to shop, but it's also a cultural and social center where locals and tourists can meet to experience the unique taste, tradition, and spirit of New Orleans. Cajun food, with its strong, spicy flavors, is a mainstay of the food scene in the Big Easy. Cajun food came from the rural areas of Louisiana. It was brought there by French-speaking Canadian immigrants called Acadians or Cajuns. The dishes were influenced by the food that was available in the area, like seafood and spices from Africa. Cajun food became popular quickly and changed the southern food scene in a big way. Cajun restaurants and dishes can be found all over the South today, but there is no place like New Orleans to taste the real taste of Cajun food. You can find Jackson Square in the middle of the French Quarter. It is a busy, well-known public space with a lot of history and culture. In the late 1700s, the square was called Place Arms. In 1850, the name was changed to honor Andrew Jackson. After he beat the British at the Battle of New Orleans, he went on to fight in other battles. Locals and tourists have been meeting in the square for hundreds of years, and it's still a popular place for tourists to visit. In the middle of the square is a statue of Andrew Jackson, who was the 17th President of the United States and a hero in the War of 1812. The statue is surrounded by beautiful gardens, old buildings, and a lot of street performers and artists who can make the area feel lively. St. Louis Cathedral, a beautiful example of Spanish colonial architecture, is the most important building in the square. It is the oldest Catholic cathedral that has always been open in the United States. The cathedral was built in the late 1700s. It has 3 spires, 2 bell towers, and a very interesting central nave. Inside, there are beautiful frescoes, elaborate altarpieces, and complicated stained glass windows. Guided tours of the cathedral give visitors an in-depth look at its long history and beautiful design. A number of historic buildings like the Cabildo and the Presbytery are also on the square. Both of these buildings were built in the late 1700s, and they have been very important in the history of New Orleans and the state of Louisiana. The Louisiana Purchase transfer ceremony took place at the Cabildo, and the Presbytery was once used as a courthouse. Aside from its history, Jackson Square is also a place where artists and street performers sell their work. There are painters, sketch artists, and even fortune tellers in the square, which gives it a bohemian feel. Steamboats have been going down the Mississippi River since the early 1800s, when these impressive ships first started doing so. When you are on a steamboat, you can enjoy fine dining, entertainment, and opulent furniture. Jazz music also grew a lot with the people of steamboats. On board, famous musicians like Louis Armstrong and Jelly Roll Morton played, but the steamboats were used for more than just fun. They were also very important for getting goods and people from one place to another. Today, steamboats are remembered as a sign of bygone era, but their legacy lives on in New Orleans and the Mississippi River. And while we're talking about the Mississippi, it was very important to the growth of New Orleans. It was a way for the first settlers to get around and to give the growing population food and water. Cotton, sugar, and tobacco were grown in the areas around the river and shipped to the port of New Orleans. The river was a major hub for these shipments. The river was also very important to the city's economy and way of life. The port of New Orleans was one of the busiest in the country, and the city was a major hub for trade, industry, and finance. The Mississippi River also contributed to the unique mix of French, Spanish, African, and Native American cultures that make up New Orleans. But the Mississippi River also brought problems to the New Orleans, like floods, hurricanes, and soil erosion, which were made worse by things people did, like building levees and drilling for oil and gas. To protect itself from flooding and the strong currents of the river, the city had to build a complicated system of levees, canals, and pumps. And when you see the streetcars, you won't miss them. They are a popular way to get around the city because they have a lot of history and can get through the narrow streets. The New Orleans Regional Transit Authority runs the streetcar. There are three main lines: St. Charles, Canal Street, and the river. Riverfront streetcars run often during the day and into the evening, so it's easy for both locals and tourists to use them. Streetcars are also a popular way for tourists to see and hear the city. Many people ride them to see and hear the city. The French Quarter is home to the Historic Preservation Hall, which is a place for music. The venue opened in 1961 as a place to keep traditional New Orleans jazz music alive and show it off. Some of the city's best jazz musicians play concerts there every night. Don't confuse it with the Big Easy Dance Hall, which was around in the early 1900s. It's where the name Big Easy came from. But the name didn't catch on until the 1970s with the article compared the slow-paced life of New Orleans to the fast-paced life of New York. Stop by Lafayette's Blacksmith Shop Bar if you have a chance. It is thought to be one of the oldest bars in the city, and ghosts of people who used to go there are said to haunt it. Or if you don't like scary things, you can go to Café du Monde. It's a restaurant and coffee shop that has been around since 1862. On this simple menu, you can get coffee, chicory, coffee, and Baker Mayer, which is a sugar-dusted donuts that are deep fried. It's a place where both tourists and locals like to hang out. You can sit outside if you want to. It's open all the time and every day of the week. If you like parks, City Park is one of the oldest urban parks in the United States. It's over 1,300 acres big. It has a golf course, tennis courts, and several places to have a picnic. The park is also a popular place for both locals and tourists, and it hosts a number of events such as concerts, festivals, and sports games throughout the year. The National Audubon Society has called it an important bird area, which makes it a great place to watch birds. Check out the Best Hoff Sculptures Garden while you're there. It is a 5-acre outdoor garden with over 60 sculptures made by artists from all over the world. The garden is free to visit and has art on display amongst native plants and live oaks. It is open to the public and is a popular place for art lovers and people who want a quiet place to relax. The Sidney and Val Day Bestoff Foundation is also based there, which gives money for art, environmental protection, education, and research. Or go to the Audubon Park if you're in the uptown neighborhood. It's beautiful for its famous oak trees and lush greenery, as well as its many places to play and relax. The Audubon Butterfly Garden and Insectaria, the Audubon Zoo, and the Audubon Aquarium of the Americas are all in the park. It also has baseball fields, tennis courts, and golf courses, and a jogging path that goes for 1.8 miles. It is a popular place for both locals and tourists, and many events have been there all year long. Mardi Gras, also called Fat Tuesday, is one of the best known and most loved events in New Orleans. It is a time of costumes, parades, and parties that happens every year on the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, which is the beginning of the Christian Lenten season. The first French settlers came to the area in the early 18th century. This is where Mardi Gras New Orleans got its start. They brought with them the traditional ways of celebrating Carnival, like fancy balls, parties with masks, and parades with lots of bright colors. Over time, these traditions have changed and blended with local ones to make the Mardi Gras party we know today. The parade is the most important part of Mardi Gras, and during Carnival season, dozens of parade groups take the streets of New Orleans. Each crew has its own theme and they compete to make floats that are most elaborate and fun. The crew of Ricks leads the parades and has the honor of choosing the Mardi Gras king and queen of each year. And even though Mardi Gras is a time to party, it is also a time when people follow certain traditions. Many of the traditions and customs of Mardi Gras have been passed down from generation to generation and are still done today. This means that masks and customs are used, which are thought to have come from the Roman holiday of Saturnalia, and Mardi Gras is also a time when everyone comes together as a group. Volunteers put their crews that plan the parades and balls, and they work all together to make the amazing things that we see during the Carnival season. Parades and balls are the main events of Mardi Gras, but that's not where the real spirit of the holiday lies. People from New Orleans get together to celebrate the city and culture. The celebration is a great example of how the unique mix of cultures in New Orleans make it such a special and lively place. Mardi Gras is an event you don't want to miss, and people come from all over the world to see. It is a big party, love and life, and community, which is a very important part about the culture, how New Orleans sees itself, and it's a party that is different and unique as the city itself. And it shows the true spirit of the people who live in New Orleans. So whether you live in New Orleans or have just visiting, the city has the power to enchant and inspire, and it's a place you remember long after you've left. It is a place where the present and the past meet to make something new and truly one of a kind. Thanks for watching.